Right, evening, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm just sat here in my nice warm office with an absolute hoolie of a gale blowing outside. Honestly, I'm looking out thinking, is this really March? Have the clocks gone forward and are we in spring? It doesn't seem quite right. I don't know about you guys. What sort of a Sunday have you guys had? What sort of a weekend generally? Has it been a good one so far? I've spent because bar the hoolie now, we had some lovely sunshine this morning. So I was pottering around having a lovely time in my garden first thing this morning. Um, not so much now. Very glad to be here in the warm, has to be said. Right, welcome, welcome. It's nice to see everybody. And thank you, everybody that submitted a question to me, either via email or via comments on the Facebook post I put up a little bit earlier. Yeah, I appreciate you kind of letting me know where you're at, what you're thinking about. Yeah, that's really useful for me to understand, and it will just be able to help you. All right, guys, let me just have a quick look through the comments and just see who. Yeah, very mixed weather here too. Yeah, Andy says very busy day, very rainy during the day. Sharon here. I'm not under Zoom user again. You are not under Zoom user again, Sharon. Hello. It's calm now in Morecambe, but a bit windy earlier. June evening. Yes, evening. Yeah, Nikki says very blow walk with the dogs too. Yes. Oh, well, thank goodness we're all sat indoors doing this Zoom rather than having to be in some sort of outdoor field or I've taught in some rather cold training arenas in the past. So yes, this is nice. Right. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you for giving up some time for me on your Sunday evening, because I appreciate, there's things going on in friends and family and whatnot. So yeah, appreciate you being here. And tonight we're going to do something a little differently, in so much as rather than me trying to answer every single question one by one, only we might be here for some time. I've been reading through your comments and I've been looking for the patterns underneath what you've been asking. And what's really struck me is that although the details vary, so we've got traffic for some, barking at home, barking at visitors, other dogs, hoopers classes that came up, I think, from somebody in the car, not settling, getting overexcited. The pattern underneath is often very similar. So what I would say is these are not loads of completely separate random problems. They're often different expressions of the same dog struggling with arousal, coping, clarity over what's expected, frustration or context. All right. So tonight, I want to help you make sense of what comes next, because for a lot of you, the issue is not what you haven't tried. It's that you don't always know what to work on first, what matters most. I think that's a key one, or how to keep building without feeling like you're making it up as you go along. All right. Am I right? Am I right so far? Does that sound about right from everybody kind of sat here this evening? Yeah, you're just not quite sure what to do next. Yeah. Oh, Pat says she's got no sound. Can everybody else hear me okay? Just give me some thumbs up if that's the case. Yeah, okay, people can hear. All right. I'm sorry about that, Pat. I'm not sure why. Maybe is it worth plugging and unplugging? Yeah, I'm definitely plugged in. So yeah. Okay, thanks, guys. Right. So one of the biggest themes in your answers was that life with your dog can feel overwhelming. Welcome to the world of Border Collies, I guess, to a degree. But the unsafe bit, obviously, is a big issue and something that I want to help you with. Now, for some of you, that shows up on walks. For some of you, it shows up around roads, dogs, bikes, or movement. For some of you, it's showing up at home. So barking at visitors, barking when someone moves, jumping up when you're cooking came up, snarling when another dog enters the room, or struggling when the house feels busy. So if you've got sort of a house where you kind of have people coming and going, that can be tricky too. But the pattern underneath is often the same. So your dog is feeling too much. We really like the expression dogs having big feelings about things as opposed to them having reactions, as it were, because everything's a reaction, isn't it, whether it's good or bad. But big feelings describes our negative feelings that we sometimes see in these Border Collies. But they're feeling too much. They're feeling too quickly. So they're not really engaging brain before they react. And then behavior starts spiraling from there. All right. And when that happens regularly, of course, it affects you too, doesn't it? And everybody else in the house as well, which can then have a knock-on effect to your relationships with other people in your house as well. So you understandably start bracing, you start scanning, you start anticipating what might go wrong, and you probably start changing routes. If you haven't already, you probably start changing routes, routines, even normal life. You're just trying to avoid that next explosion. Now, if that's you, I want to say really clearly, it doesn't mean that you're failing, and it doesn't mean that your dog is impossible. I promise. Usually, when life feels unsafe or overwhelming like this, the dog is not giving you a hard time. All right, they're having a hard time. I really think that's worth going on a t-shirt somewhere, because I think we could do with getting that message out a bit more. Your dog is not intentionally giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time. Okay. Now, they may be overloaded by movement. They might be overwhelmed by noise, and attached to noise is vibrations. So you may have noticed particular things set your dog off, and I would guess that vibrations are attached to some of those noises. Some will be frustrated by restriction, so maybe being on the lead when they prefer to be off the lead. This is a big one with collies, struggling with anticipation. All right, so they know the dot to dot puzzle. Yeah, they know how it works. They know what comes next, and they're now struggling with the anticipation, possibly because it's not the dot to dot is not coming quick enough, or because they don't like the end of the dot to dot puzzle. And sometimes it's that they're carrying more stress than we realize from one day of one part of the day into another. So we can have maybe a few busy days, and then they all add up for our dogs. Does that sound similar to some of the situations that you're struggling with at home at the moment? Yeah. And very often, I think owners end up trying to manage the moment the dog is already falling apart. So it's that bit that you're like, okay, what do I do when they are having this really, big explosion? But, and I know that we've talked about this in the past week, the real shift usually comes earlier than that. So it comes from noticing a little bit sooner, asking less at the right time, making the picture simpler, and getting much clearer on what this dog actually needs in order to stay in a place where learning is still possible. All right. So for those of you that are kind of those questions that have come into this bucket, if you like, that I'm going through, the answer is not usually tougher handling or trying to push through. I would argue it's better timing, it's better setups, and it's more realistic expectations, and more help for the dog before they're already in a mess. All right, before you're all in, a bit of a mess. That's what starts making life feel bigger again, because we can kind of grow from that point. And once we start seeing that, the next pattern begins to make a lot more sense. All right. Okay, so this next one, my dog is fine here, fill in the gap, but falls apart there. All right, and I'm sure you can come up with scenarios that they're not good in. So this is really common with Border Collies. So many of you are describing dogs who can do lovely things in one place and then seem to forget everything somewhere else. All right, that's your perception of what's happening. They can do these lovely things in this environment, but they just, and probably in places where it's important, they can't do it there. So they can do it maybe in the house, maybe in your living room at home. They can do it with no distractions around. They can do it when it's their turn. So, for example, in the scenario of maybe being at agility or hoopers class, they're all right when it's their turn. Just the waiting patiently bit's a bit tricky. They can do it when they have a long line on. But then as soon as the environment changes or any of those factors change, the dog looks completely different. All right. Now, that doesn't usually mean they're being stubborn. It's just that our Border Collies were bred to notice stuff. So they notice these little details. And then when those details change, from their perspective, it's a different question. And it usually means there's a gap between what they can do in one context and then what they can do in another. Because dogs don't automatically generalize as neatly as we would like them to. So a cue that feels easy in the kitchen can feel completely different when there's movement going on around them, the distance they are, compared to the thing, what noises are going on, if they've got that anticipation about what might be coming next in them, frustration, really big one that they struggle with, other dogs being around, things like traffic and the unpredictability of traffic, or even just a much bigger environment, that they find themselves in. And I think this is where a lot of people get disheartened, because they think, oh, she does know this. She does know this. He can do this at home. We worked on this loads. Hands up if this applies to you guys. I know if I'd be a very rich lady if I'd had £1 for every time somebody had told me, he can do this at home. I know, and I'm sorry that they can't do it here in this training class environment that we're in. And the thing is, all of that may be true. It really will, really can be. But what your answers show is that for many of you, the issue is not no training. It's not like you've been sat doing nothing with these dogs. It's that the layers haven't been built strongly enough for the environments you want to take them into and live in. So the question is not, how do I make my dog just do it? Question is, what is missing between here and there? All right. What layer of this is too thin? So what part of the picture changed from my collie's perspective? What support was possible here, but not there? All right. That question changes everything. Looking at that gap, it changes everything, because it moves you away from frustration and back into actual problem solving. Okay. And for some of you, it isn't even one gap. Don't worry, I'm coming on to that. And it feels like everything is tangled together. So I get that. That's a lot. So this was a bunch of questions came under kind of this bucket, or, I put into this bucket, if you like. Everything feels connected and I don't know where to start. This one of your questions? Hands up. You can pop in the chat if this is this feels like one of your questions. Now, this was another huge theme in your comments. So a lot of you are not saying, I have one neat problem. Okay. I get that. Border Collies are complex. What you're saying is, we've got barking, we've got pulling, we've got over arousal, there's reactivity, not settling, recall issues, and I don't know what to do first. Yeah. And that can feel exhausting, because when everything feels connected, it's really easy to end up doing bits of lots of things without feeling like you're getting proper traction anywhere. Because essentially you're kind of spreading your focus and attention really thin. So if that's you, here's the good news. You do not need to solve everything at once. Okay, write that down. You do not need to solve everything at once. You do not need a perfect 6-month training plan tonight. Okay, you do not need to untangle every issue before change can begin. I absolutely know this to be true. You just need the right place to start. And this is really important. Sometimes the reason a problem has stayed stuck for a long time is not because you haven't worked hard enough on that problem. It's because the real starting point was somewhere underneath it. Because sometimes the issue underneath it is something to do with arousal or frustration tolerance, the ability to disengage, huge, really bad for Border Collies, very difficult for them, coping skills, clearer foundations, clearer communication from our end of the lead, or helping the dog stay in a state where they can think at all. So the visible problem might be recall. So they're ignoring their recall cue. But the real starting point might be, I need to teach this dog disengagement. I need to teach them how to disengage from something when they become fixated on it. The visible problem might be barking at other dogs. But it may well be that, I need to work on helping them cope earlier and build more layers. The visible problem might be getting the dog into the car. But the real starting point might be fear and overwhelm. And it's not to do with compliance at all. This is why support matters. Because when you're in the middle of it, everything can feel urgent and equally important. It's like that old saying, you can't see the wood from the trees. But usually there is one place to start that creates the biggest knock-on effect. I think of it a bit like domino. One of the things that my club students and I talk about is working out what's the domino that we start with, because if we knock that first domino down, that sets off a chain of positive reactions. And that's what makes progress feel steadier again. And the reason this matters so much is because all of this affects the human side too. All right, your end of the lead. And you're important in this as well. So owner emotion, confidence, and consistency. All right, this theme came through so strongly in your comments, even when you weren't saying it directly. But I could really hear the nerves. I could hear the frustration, totally get the frustration. And I could hear some of the self-doubt. That made me a bit sad. I don't like people doubting themselves. And I could hear people wondering if they were doing it wrong. And I could hear people feeling overwhelmed, tired out, or like they were carrying a lot. Yeah. And I think this matters so much because when behavior feels messy or unpredictable, owners often assume the answer is to be stricter with themselves. Okay. You got to try harder. You got to be more disciplined. Push through. Stop getting emotional. So far, I've not met anybody that when they've been told to calm down, that they have managed, to be able to calm down just because someone was kind enough to say, just calm down. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that. Actually, for many of you, the answer is really not about more pressure. It's more clarity. Yeah, it's more clarity. Joanna says, this is me. Yes. Because when you feel clearer, calmer, and more supported, you make better decisions. That's a statement. All right. When you feel clearer, calmer, and more supported, you make better decisions because you notice more quickly. You start asking better questions. You don't panic as much when things wobble because you're a bit clearer about what's going on. And you're much more likely to stick with the right things long enough to see change. Okay. Because change isn't a magic wand job. It does take step by step and going over things. But when you understand what you're doing and where you're headed, it is easier to stick with it enough to see that change that you're after. Whereas when you're second guessing yourself the whole time, or blaming yourself, or trying to hold on to too many pieces in your head, it becomes much harder to be consistent. I don't know many people that can be like that. And consistency does matter, not in a perfectionistic way. All right. Your perfectionistic gremlin is not allowed to come and tell you off about this. Consistency is not about doing everything perfectly every day. Consistency for me is coming back to the right things over and over again, even when life is busy and even when your dog has a wobble and even when you do. You're allowed wobbles as well, by the way. So if you've been feeling disheartened, perhaps a bit emotional or a bit lost in all of this, and I've read from some of your comments that I get it, some people are, I really want you to know that this does not mean that you're not capable of making progress. Usually just means you've been trying to carry too much by yourself. Yeah. And that brings me to my final piece, because what many of you need next is not just more information, because I think that will just increase the overwhelm. What really came through reading your answers is that many of you do not need more random tips because you already care, you've already tried, and many of you already know a fair bit. It's really nice listening to people in the group. Many of you already do know a fair bit. And some of you have had some lovely wins this week too, which is really nice. What's missing is not effort, okay? What's missing is knowing what to focus on next, knowing whether you're starting in the right place, and knowing how to build from one environment to another. Yeah. And knowing, and this one's a biggie, knowing what to do when things wobble and not having to figure all of that out on your own. Does that sound about right? I mean, tell me if I'm massively off, guys, but does that sound about right from your perspective as to where you are? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. And I really think it's such an important distinction. Because when people feel stuck, they often go looking for more information. So I put my hands up to this. I know I do. Another video, another method, another exercise, another thing to try. But information without structure often just creates more noise. And what changes things is having the right framework, the right next step, the right feedback, and the right support at the right time. Yeah. So that's why weeks like this can be so helpful, because they give you light bulb moments. I think probably everybody's come away with at least one light bulb moment this past week. And many of you, many more, because they help you see your dog differently and they help you realize that you're not the only one. But they also show you something else. 5 days is a brilliant start, and it is still only a start, because the real shift comes from building on it. So layering it up, getting feedback, adjusting things when needed, and then carrying on when normal life kicks back in, because it will. You know, it's one of my favorite sayings: life gets in the way of dog training. It's very annoying. Now, before I finish, I do want to answer a few specific questions that came in, because there's such good examples of the patterns that we've just talked about. Okay, so let me just bring up the first question. So this is Jade's question, and it's such a good one because I think loads of people will recognize it. And you might actually find that it's not dogs across the road, it might be something else. But sometimes in those type situations, it looks like they might cope. Okay. And this is, this is the point of this question. Dog across the road, sometimes Jay's dog can focus, sometimes breaks at the last minute and lunges and barks. What to do in that moment? So if sometimes your dog looks like they might cope, sometimes they do, but also sometimes they might be okay until the very last minute. Honestly, in that kind of situation, I personally would not wait around to find out what version I was going to get. Okay. So if I saw the other dog and I knew my own dog might struggle, I would be much more inclined to turn myself around and just go, we're headed off in the other direction. Not in a panicky way, not in a like I'm rushing because I'm worried about what, I'm just like, and this way, and off we go. I'm going to take control of the situation. Because the reason for that is I want to take the responsibility off the dog to make a brilliant decision in a picture that might already be too hard. Yeah. I don't want to stand there hoping that they'll manage. And I don't want to wait for the wobble. I don't want the dog rehearsing going over threshold if I could have stepped in earlier. So for me, that is not about panicking or teaching the dog the world is dangerous. It's just about making a sensible decision early enough so that the dog doesn't have to unravel. It's me saying, I can see this picture might be hard for you, so I'm going to help you out here. I'm your parent in this situation. It's like parent-child role. Yeah, I see that this is difficult for you, so I'm not going to give you the opportunity to get this bit wrong. And for a lot of dogs, that kind of earlier support is exactly what helps them start to trust the process more. Because the more often they get tipped over, the more likely they are to keep expecting that picture to feel difficult. Whereas if we step in sooner and create more space sooner and stop waiting for the dog to fail, we usually get much better learning. So my thinking there would be, don't gamble with it, make the decision earlier, take the pressure off, and let that be information for your future training rather than a moment where your dog has to, potentially try and pull off a perfect response. Okay. All right. So this next question, worked on recall for nearly 4 years, done recallers twice. It's a brilliant program by Susan Garrett. No real improvement when Rosie is overexcited or doesn't want to stop. Maybe needs to start somewhere else. So Pat's question is such a good one, and I think it will resonate with more people than just Pat as well. So first of all, I just want to say this clearly. Susan Garrett's Recallers is an excellent program. I've done it myself in the past, and there's a lot of really good training in there. And if you've done something like that and you're still feeling stuck, I don't think the takeaway is, well, that was rubbish. I don't think that's the takeaway at all. And I also don't think that the takeaway should be, I must have failed. All right. I think neither of those things are the takeaways from that. What I think very often happens in something like a very good program, that it gives you really strong information and exercises. But if it's not massively interactive in the moment, it can still be hard to see exactly what needs adjusting for your dog, or you and your dog. And sometimes those adjustments are everything. Now, it might be the point at which the dog is already, too far gone, the setup being a bit too hard, the reinforcement not quite landing how you think it is. Some of the videos, there's loads of stuff that I'd like to sort of go into deeper about some of the videos I've seen this week about reinforcement not landing quite how people perhaps think it is. Something like the dog is struggling with disengagement rather than the recall itself, touched on that a bit earlier, or the owner needing to help spotting where the gap really is, And I've seen this inside the club before with a student in a very similar position, actually, where it wasn't that she hadn't done good training or used a good program. It was just once I could actually see what was happening through video feedback and things and give feedback on those details, because like I say, devil's in the detail, that's when things started to improve. And I think that's the big difference there for me. Sometimes what gets people unstuck is not another chunk of information. Having someone look at your dog, your timing, your setup, your progression, and say, this bit here, this is where I'd tweak it. Or actually, I wouldn't start with recall at all. I'd start underneath it. We need to be looking at something slightly different. So yes, if you've been working on recall for a long time and still feel stuck, I do think it's worth asking whether the missing piece is not more repetition, but more feedback, more individualized support. Because sometimes it's not that you need more training ideas. You often just need help fine-tuning the ones you're already using. Okay. And this last question from Bethany. So noise or excitement overstimulates the dog. He grabs and sinks teeth into whoever is closest. Frightened, when he's frightened, difficult with car, lifting would risk bite. Okay. Now, Bethany's question is such an important one because when dogs get this overwhelmed, the behavior can look pretty dramatic and very scary, actually. And I think the first thing I want to say is that when a dog is grabbing or using teeth in moments like that, it does not automatically mean aggression in the way people often fear. So very often it means the dog is out of safer ways to cope. All right. So ideally, the feedback would have been picked up on perhaps earlier, but they're out of options now. This is how, they're responding in the moment. They're frightened, they're overloaded, they're now dysregulated, and then behavior is just spilling out. So for me, the starting point here would not be, how do I make him get into the car? Or how do I stop the grabbing in the moment by, say, being firmer, for example? The starting point would be, how do I lower overall overwhelm? Okay, so not just in that particular moment, but overall in dog's life. So how do I make the picture feel safer? How do I stop rehearsing panic where I can? And then how do I work on those problem areas at a level where he can still think? Because with behavior like this, the other thing is to bear in mind is our reaction to it. Understandably, we are potentially going to be thinking about backing off. I'd also be thinking about safety tools, not because I'm labeling the dog as bad or aggressive or anything like that, but because if a dog is frightened enough or overwhelmed enough to use their mouth, a properly introduced muzzle can give everybody more breathing room while you work on what's underneath. Okay, just makes everybody feel more confident and a bit safer. And I'd also want to make sure that we're not missing anything physical. All right, because when dogs are struggling this much with coping, especially if certain situations seem to tip them over very fast, I do think it's worth looking carefully at physical comfort and health as part of the picture too. Yeah. Sometimes there can also be a place for extra support for the nervous system, but I'd always want that to be thought about as part of the bigger picture rather than just the whole answer too. Because with dogs like this, safety matters, slowing down matters, and not forcing the issue matters. That's taking marbles out the jar, which we obviously don't want to be doing. And often these types of dogs need us to stop thinking in terms of he won't and start thinking in terms of right now, he can't cope with that picture in the way that I'd hoped. So it's like a reframe. And that doesn't mean there's no way forward. It means the way forward has to start from a calmer, safer, and more thoughtful place. Okay. Right. Okay. So, as I say, thank you for being here. And I'm aware, as I say, Sunday evening, I'm doing my best to answer as quickly as possible as we've gone through. But what I'm hoping from what we've talked about so far this evening is that hopefully what you're hearing from all of this is that the question is not really, do I need more random tips? I think we've established that. The question is, do I need help working out the right place to start, the right next step, and how to keep building from there? Does that feel right? Does that feel like what we've talked about this evening? Yeah. Oh, thanks, Trina. She says, it's been fabulous. Thank you. You're very welcome. Yeah, absolutely. There was a good comment about selecting the right muzzle that I could feed treats through. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. Okay. So I think for so many of you, I think the answers to those things really is yes, isn't it? Because what we've done this week is start making sense of things. And what we do inside Collie Culture Club is we keep going with that. And that's where we take the dog who is fine here, but not there, the dog whose world has got too small, and the owner who feels overwhelmed, and the dog whose problems seem all tangled together. And we turn that into a steadier, clear plan of what to do. Again, not perfection, not looking for robots, and not fixing everything overnight, but it's real support around what to focus on, what to build first, what to tweak, as you're going along, and what to do when things wobble. So if you've seen yourself in any of the brackets of questions that I've put together tonight, that's exactly what the club is for. Not because you failed, all right, and not because your dog is too much, but because progress gets much easier when you stop trying to carry it all on your own. Okay. Hopefully that all makes sense, guys. Right. You're all very welcome. Thank you for the lovely comments that have been coming in both through the week and in the chat tonight. I really appreciate it. Sue asked a question. She said, Gemma, can we join the club at any time or just this week? So it's just this next week until October. That's when we're next going to be opening it. And really the reason is that my team and I, it's a very small team. I say team and I, it makes me sound like I've got a whole bunch of people. But there's just 3 of us, 2 lovely ladies that help me with both tech and admin stuff. And essentially, when we are welcoming people into the club, we block out a couple of weeks where the tech side of things is all kind of on top of all of the admin stuff to get people in. And we also, during that period, do welcome calls where, like this Zoom tonight, but everybody has microphone and video on, and we just have a bit of a chat backwards and forwards. And essentially, we make space in the diary for those couple of weeks after people have joined up for the club. But there's obviously other stuff going on throughout the rest of the year. So it's not closed forever, but it's just open this next week. And then, as I say, it won't be open again until October. All right. Okay. Oh, Linda says, I appreciate you, Gemma, and your advice is comforting. And I wish the best to all of us here. We love our dogs, and that's why we're here. Thank you. Linda, well said. Yeah, absolutely. I totally believe everybody here, just by showing up, I know that you love your dogs. Yeah, it's exactly the wonderful thing about these challenges is the community it builds. I think that's a really big piece of the puzzle. So yeah. Zoom user says, well, I suppose if a shepherd gave up training, what hope have I? So I love that statement, but I actually had a foster collie who was a failed sheepdog. What I would say is, and I know some really, really patient dog trainery type shepherds, and then I know some slightly less patient, less dog trainery shepherds. All right. Casting no shade, but what I would say is that, yeah, not everybody can be good at everything. Okay. And sometimes dogs get rejected because people don't have the time or the knowledge or maybe the interest in getting to understand a bit more. So I would say there's probably still hope there, definitely. Elaine says, Gemma, you have so much knowledge, and I hope we can help Dylan using this to finally help him and us enjoy his life. I look forward to doing that, Elaine. Honestly, I really do. Like I say, we have a Q&A weekly with club students, and it's really nice to get into people's questions a bit more. And also then to be able to go, okay, go away and try that for this week, and then come back to next Q&A next week, and let's talk about it, how it's got on and how things are going. So that, yeah, it's lovely to be able to help people on a kind of in a deeper way. Trine says, I would love to join the Collie Culture Club, but I'm a bit short on resources. Is it possible to join later? Oh, okay. So I covered the join later. And if I should manage to join, would it be possible for my daughter to use it when I have to go away in May? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the beauties of the online training, from my perspective, is if you have family members that are involved in your dog's lives, ideally we'd all be singing from the same song sheet, wouldn't we? Because what that means is that your dog has more clarity, it builds their confidence, it builds your confidence, and generally speaking, it tends to make family life a little bit more harmonious, and I'm all for that. So yeah, absolutely, Trine, that's no problem at all. Cases, I didn't get a Zoom invitation and missed most of the training. It took me a while to find the replays. Can I still join the club? You absolutely can. So if everybody wants to check out their emails in the morning, I think it's scheduled for something like 9 o'clock in the morning. But we are going to be inviting you officially to the club because you guys get it. You guys get that this is something that you're going to need help going forward with. And as we've gone through the week, and I'm grateful for all of your lovely comments. But yeah, I can help you. I can help you get where you want to get to. That's the thing. Okay. Right. Okay. Nikki says, I joined the Collie Culture Club yesterday and I'm so looking forward to working with you and your team. Brilliant, Nikki. I'm looking forward to helping. That's brilliant. Right. Okay, guys, as I say, conscious, it's your Sunday evening and I appreciate you being here. I am going to pop this recording up in the Facebook group so that you can take a watch back. If there's anything that you missed or if you joined in a bit late, then it should be up a little bit later on this evening. But otherwise, keep an eye out for that invitation tomorrow. And I look forward to helping, make you and your Border Collies lives that little bit better in the coming weeks. All right. Okay. I'll look forward to talking to you all very soon. Take care.